We do roll on this edition of Three Dog Thursday, and as promised, we're going to get some more insight not only on what's going on at South Carolina with the firing of Will Muschamp, what is the latest with the New Orleans Saints, my goodness, and Drew Brees being out, and what are they going to do at quarterback with the game with the Falcons this week? Joining me to help me, what a motley crew we are again here as we go to the Three Dog Thursday Roundtable on video. Reminder, if you're only hearing us, you can see us on the video roundtable on YouTube. Victor Howell is here from Cox Sports Television. They're in the Louisiana region, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, etc. Brother Howell, good to have you kicking it in here with the Three Dog Thursday video roundtable.
I appreciate the invite. It's great to join you guys. I'm sorry that when you come to me for my portion, it's all bad news between LSU football and Drew Brees with ribs and lungs. But hey, we got to push through, right? Either way, games are being played, so it's good to join you guys.
Yes, we do have games that are going on, and no, I do not want to talk about these guys and the Saints from about 10 days ago because I still haven't recovered from that one, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, big time. Chris Phillips is here from the Spurs Up Show, Columbia, South Carolina. There is nobody, I'm convinced of this, on the planet that knows more about South Carolina and the inner workings of football and basketball and all South Carolina sports than this man, the host of the Spurs Up Show. Brother Phillips, good to have you here on the program.
TJ, always a pleasure, man. Appreciate you reaching out to me. Yeah, really excited, like I was telling you off air, man, not only for football, but I'm excited for Gamecocks basketball. I think Frank Martin and the boys have got a squad this year. I'm hoping one of the sports teams can figure it out because you're talking Bucs, Saints, LSU, South Carolina football. It's like, can we talk about some winning teams? That would be kind of a nice change of pace. But no, seriously, man, appreciate you reaching out. Excited to be here.
Love it. And so that's the perfect segue. Here we go. All right. An in-season firing at South Carolina. We're seeing it on the screen. Will Muschamp out, 3 losses in a row. Defense has given up a bazillion yards and about 793 points the last 3 weeks. And that's it for Muschamp, deleted in this bizarre 2020 year, this bizarre 2020 college football season. During the season, he is out after the loss to Ole Miss. So the first question is to you, Chris. How surprised are you, not that it happened, but it happened in the middle of the year, towards the end of the year here, with games still to play?
Not as surprised as you would probably think from what I was hearing from behind the scenes and everything as things sort of started to unravel. You know, I was actually at this game, ironically enough, in Baton Rouge against LSU, and you felt like maybe that Auburn game would be the springboard for South Carolina, using that as a platform to build some momentum in year 5 of the program. But you get embarrassed on the road in Baton Rouge, then get embarrassed yet again against Texas A&M, have the game against Ole Miss, 159 points your defense had given up in 3 games. And I just think in year 5 of the Will Muschamp era, you know, I was out on Will Muschamp after year 4, after the first game of year 4 against North Carolina, where I just saw the incompetence of having an entire offseason to get ready to play a North Carolina team with a first-year head coach, with a true freshman quarterback, and Will Muschamp yet again having his team fall flat on their face. And then you lose to App State later that season as well. So there were a lot of people who were already out at that point. And then you come in this year, like I said, yet again, you know, last year you had the big upset win over Georgia. You lost 5 of your last 6. You did nothing with that win. It felt very similar this year with that trend. And again, in year 5, you're getting blown out. And again, offensively, you expected the Will Muschamp era to have some questions and some things happen offensively where you were scratching your head. But year 5 defensively, again, a 3-game stretch, you give up 159 points. And I wasn't that surprised, TJ, it happened because you heard the rumblings after Texas A&M that South Carolina's big-time boosters that give a lot of the money, that funnel this money to the facilities, they were not pleased. They were not very happy. And I had heard that if Will Muschamp, if this team lost to Ole Miss, and definitely did it in embarrassing fashion. I know we obviously talk a bunch of gambling on this show. You know, I said all week, I think if Ole Miss covers the 13.5-point spread, there's no way he survives it. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I think, listen, it was something that was brewing for a long time, and it's something that I know for Gamecock fans is unfortunate and bittersweet, believe it or not, because people wanted to see him succeed here. They wanted to see the second chance to Will Muschamp work out, but in the end, South Carolina just had to make the move. And again, I'm not surprised that it came in season where now they have, you know, some time to find that next head coach before that December 16th signing day. Get the new guy in there, let him talk to the recruits they currently have committed, bring his guys in. So, no, not totally surprised, and I think it was a move that was needed for South Carolina.
All right. So, again, Victor, you are detached from that situation. Obviously, I am as well. But this was not going well. This was not a good look. I'm going to share the screen again here and let you comment on what we're seeing on the screen here. This was him animated, upset the other night at the officials. This was typical when he was at the University of Florida as a head coach and flamed out and was removed. Not a good look here. Victor, does it surprise you, detached from the distance, that South Carolina did it during the season?
No, not at all. I think a lot of it is also building. You know, people are wondering why they make a move with a buyout like that when South Carolina is saying they're going to be losing $40 million. LSU has said they're going to lose $70 to $80 million. And trust me, there's an issue here in Baton Rouge. We got a new defensive coordinator who's not necessarily new to Baton Rouge. He was here before, and Bo Pelini, and Tiger fans are ready for him to leave because of what the LSU struggles have been. I think Chris is right on it. Obviously, I'm detached from what the feelings were with South Carolina, but when South Carolina came here, I'm not so surprised when Chris said about them getting blown out. I'm not surprised they got blown out in Baton Rouge. That happens to a lot of people. But you got to remember, when Carolina rolled into town, Miles Brennan wasn't playing. He's played 3 games and he's been done. So the one guy who's been waiting his turn doesn't play. All of a sudden, LSU debuts a freshman quarterback who lights it up against South Carolina. And that really, to me, was the beginning of that snowball. And when you see him acting like that at halftime, you know things are unraveling. He knows it's unraveling with those frustrations. But, you know, I mean, I totally understand what Chris is saying, and I do agree. I think it all started with LSU. South Carolina came in on momentum. LSU did not have momentum. There have been questions swirling about this defending national championship team that's just gone absolutely flat this season. And all of a sudden the Gamecocks roll in after a big win. You're like, oh, my goodness, now there's no starting quarterback for LSU. We've got a freshman, and they torched him. And then since then, LSU hasn't done anything, and neither has South Carolina. They've made a coaching change.
That is the voice of Victor Howell. Love his insight. He is with Cox Sports Television, CSTV in Louisiana. Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up Show is here. Great podcast, great insight on South Carolina, everything with the Gamecock programs, plural. If you're only hearing us, as I am going to say at least once more on this podcast, you can find the video and see us on YouTube, the Three Dog Thursday video page. Again, if you're only hearing the podcast, however you found it, through a social media link, sportsgamblingpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Come find the video, see the moving pictures, see what we look like. Victor's the big TV star out of the whole group here.
TV star with a face for radio and podcast.
I think we all three might qualify there on that. Okay, so just one more on the SEC in general. Quick comment from both of you right now. We've got COVID situations, COVID-19 delays all over the place, schedule having to be jumbled up, SEC championship game looming, but makeup games looming as well. Chris, scale, let's say, of 1 to 10, are you a 7 that we're going to get all of this in and play the championship game? Are you an 8? How confident are you? And then, Victor, I'm coming to you. Chris, you first.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, I'd probably say about an 8. I feel pretty confident they're going to find a way to get in. You know, the SEC from the beginning has been very, very determined. And I applaud Greg Sankey and that crew as far as their protocols, putting them in place. And listen, they've done the best they could. I mean, nobody knew how this thing was going to go. And everybody's just trying to navigate 2020. And, you know, some of the contact tracing stuff I know is very, very frustrating for somebody like Texas A&M, where you feel like, well, it's only affecting a really, really small number, but contact tracing is keeping them from playing. But I think overall having an SEC championship, I think that's going to happen. I think they'll get as many games in as they can, as long as they can have that SEC title game. That's really what it's going to come down to. But it has been crazy, man. You look at, luckily, South Carolina's been a team that hasn't been affected, but that's in jeopardy this week. I mean, South Carolina, Missouri, and Mizzou coming off. They didn't play last week due to COVID. I think Elijah Drinkwitz said they had 54 scholarship players ready to go. South Carolina's got, I think, 55 or 56 because of all of the opt-outs and the injuries. They haven't necessarily been hit by COVID, but 2020 is just a weird year. But again, with everything in consideration, I applaud the SEC, Greg Sankey, how they've done. I would probably say an 8. I still feel pretty confident as long as there are no more major outbreaks amongst the SEC institutions.
What about you, Victor Howell? How confident are you that they can get to the finish line here in a few weeks?
I'm right there with them. You saw me nodding my head. For those who are watching, I was nodding the whole time Chris was talking. I'm right there with them with an 8 to a 9. Look, there's a reason why the SEC got started so well, because they waited, unlike the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, who jumped ship and then all of a sudden decided to waited for everybody else to say, oh, the water's warm, come on back. You know, I mean, the Pac-12 is playing 6 games, and right out the gates, 2 of their games get canceled and they're not going to be made up. The SEC did everything it could the right way to delay the start into late September and line things up. I think for the SEC, the worst case scenario, perfect example, LSU scheduled to play Arkansas this week. When they take the field, assuming they do, It's been 21 days since LSU played because of a COVID game and then a bye. Now Arkansas has got a COVID situation. Hopefully it's contained, but if all of a sudden they blow up, now you've got an LSU team that's missing 3 games. Already they're going to make up 2. And it looks like what they're going to do is they'll start switching games around. So one of the games LSU missed is Florida. Another one is Alabama. Neither one of those teams want to be the one that has to play LSU and the other one doesn't. Then they're going to cry foul. So let's say those 2 teams go to the championship. They might move, say, LSU Ole Miss as an example. We thought maybe they'd do Arkansas this week, but they're not going to. But as Greg Sankey said, after this week, everything's on the table. So you might see that Ole Miss LSU game in early December get flipped, and LSU might play Alabama, then play Florida on its newly rescheduled December 12th backup game. Then on the 19th, knowing that LSU's not going to the championship game and neither is Ole Miss, those 2 teams will play. So the SEC's got the pattern there to get in. I think the worst case scenario would be a Missouri or an LSU, if it happens with Arkansas this week, missing 3 games. Then you literally run out of dates. But as of right now, I think they have the plan in place, and they will show the flexibility that the top 2 teams, should they be Alabama and Florida, they're going to go to the championship game. Everybody else will play for whatever they're trying to play for, bowl appearances, TV money, whatever. They'll figure out a way to get those games in.
Great points that you're making, and I put the hand up there for a second. I'm in the state of Florida. A lot of people think I live in the state of confusion. I live in the state of Florida, and they are going to scream from here to Hialeah, as I like to say, if they have to play LSU and Alabama doesn't have to play LSU before the championship game. So let's see how that gets juggled and how that gets worked out. I want to move on to the NFL in just a second, but Phillips, I need a quick answer from you. I was already on board in the segment before the audio segment of the podcast that I like, for no explainable reason, I like South Carolina, even with the opt-outs, the injuries, to maybe win this game outright with Missouri at home. Care to talk me out of this, talk me off the ledge and tell me how crazy I am? Missouri hasn't been favored all year long. South Carolina could win this game to me. You want to talk me out of it?
You know, it's funny. So Wednesdays on the show that I do, we give our best bet for the South Carolina game. I actually took Missouri -6.5, and it's not really indicative of my prediction necessarily, but hear me out. The biggest question in this game for South Carolina, we can talk X's and O's on the field, but it is mindset, it's mentality, it's what type of culture is there in the locker room, because we've seen some things. You can ask South Carolina fans as well. Since the firing of Will Muschamp, we all know his players love him. They'll go to bat for him, whatever. We had guys last week saying they take a bullet for him. Since that firing, you've seen things happen as far as guys saying things, the moans, the groans, the opt-outs about Will Muschamp, and since he's been fired. I just wonder, because I understand why you would take South Carolina to win straight up, because normally in a situation where you have a head coach get fired, you see a group of guys rally together. They play for their university. They play for their interim head coach. They sort of circle the wagons, if you will. I just don't know, and I don't know that I trust that culture is in place in this locker room. And that sounds crazy to say and really, really bad to say, but I think what South Carolina fans unfortunately are starting to see is the culture wasn't quite as perfect behind closed doors as we all thought it was. And if you want to talk on the field, you're talking about a Gamecocks defense yet again. Like I said, Missouri hasn't thrown for under 200 yards in a game this season, and they haven't been an offensive juggernaut or a juggernaut in general this year, but they haven't thrown for under 200 yards in a game this season. And South Carolina just lost its 2 best defensive backs and a safety. So, I mean, how in the world is the South Carolina defense?
Out of it. Yep.
I mean, I'm just saying, how in the world, and this is a question I'm trying to answer myself. You know, on one hand, I'm excited to see the young talent for South Carolina get an opportunity, but how are the Gamecocks going to get a stop? I mean, that truly is the question. So I think it's going to be a fourth quarter game, back and forth game. But listen, my prediction and my best bet might be different because, as you know, you might pick a game one way, but when you look at a line, you say, if I've got to put money on it one way or the other, I'm going to lean that way. And right now, if I had to put my money on it, I just don't know that I can trust South Carolina to show up and come together and win that football game.
I began with the premise, I have no explainable reason, because everything points to South Carolina should get rolled again in this game, but they may bow their back. They may find a way. All right, a few more moments.
Let me just tell you, Chris is talking about if South Carolina's defense is missing those key guys, it might be tough. He might say they're not an offensive juggernaut. Go back and look at that Missouri LSU tape.
Good point.
They made Missouri's quarterback look like a Heisman Trophy candidate 2 weeks after KJ Costello threw for 6,000 yards against LSU in Baton Rouge. So
that's a very good point.
They may not be a juggernaut, but they can be good. Ask LSU.
Well, and it may be another long night for the Gamecocks. Sorry, Chris, for the Spurs Up podcast. All right, we need to move along real quick before we get out of here to the New Orleans Saints. Let's get to the NFL and the weekend, and we're showing the audience again on the screen the injury to Drew Brees, the starting quarterback for the Saints last week. Basically broken ribs, already had either a broken rib or injured ribs, took a sack in the first half of the game with the 49ers, played through it the rest of the second quarter, and then Jameis Winston. Hello, Twinkie Twilight Zone for TJ watching this game. Jameis Winston now taking snaps as the Saints quarterback. And so this has been the biggest topic. And Victor, you're obviously in on the Saints coverage with Cox Sports Television, the pregame and the postgame coverage. Okay, give me the insight here on this. What about
thanks for taking the picture off the full screen. Saints fans who are watching us don't want to see that grimace anymore. So the news came down on Monday. The amazing thing is Drew was hurt probably, and we didn't know the extent. We did see him wearing a jacket in warmups at the Dome, but he took a hard hit. It was called roughing the passer, and at the time people were saying, look, that was just a hard tackle. It was clean. It wasn't a targeting with the helmet. He just got landed on by a large man, but it really kind of added to what he was already dealing with. And the thing about Drew and his toughness, he played the rest of that first half and led the Saints on 2 touchdown scoring drives, including the 2-minute drill when they scored, and he fumbled the snap and threw it to Alvin Kamara. Went in halftime, settled down, the body got stiff. He told Sean Payton he couldn't go. Monday, he gets the check, and it's 4 or 5 broken ribs and a collapsed lung. This week, even within the last, couple of hours, to show the competitiveness, he's taking all those results and wanting to go get additional opinions to make sure they're accurate so he can try to figure out when can he get back and play. The additional reviews of the medical confirmed several broken ribs and a collapsed lung. You're hearing everything from 4 to 6 weeks. Look, Drew Brees would challenge the 3 of us to a peanut butter sandwich eating contest, and he'd throw a C note on the table and say, I'm going to beat all of you. I mean, he's as competitive as anybody you've ever met. Last year with the thumb, he was throwing weeks before they said he would be throwing the ball. The difference was last year that injury happened before the bye week, and he bought himself an extra week. The Saints are past the bye week now. They got the Falcons coming up, then they go to Denver, then the Falcons again. There's a huge matchup with Kansas City, the only team with a winning record left on the schedule, December 20th. I don't know if he'll be back for that one or not. But yeah, it's a tough blow. He's one of the toughest guys around. And as I talked about with Scott Shanley, who is a Super Bowl winning linebacker with the Saints and does my show with Saints Game Day and Saints Tonight. Look, Drew's 41 going on 42. And I asked him, who's going to be the voice of reason to slow him down? Is it going to be Gail Benson, the owner? Is it going to be Mickey Loomis, the GM? Sean Payton, the head coach? His answer was Brittany. That's Drew's wife. And say, look, we've got 3 kids. You're over 40. Father time catches up with everybody. You really need to pace yourself. But be that as it may, fact of the matter is games go on. And the Saints have the Falcons for the first of 2 in 3 weeks against the NFC South rival. And welcome Jameis Winston to the black and gold party, because he took the snaps in the second half when Drew went down. He did lead him to 1 touchdown. I will say that game was not offensively aesthetic for either team, the Niners or the Saints. It's not like Jameis came in and lit it up, but it looks like he's going to be the guy. In fact, Sean Payton this morning was asked on a teleconference about some comments he made several months ago about Taysom Hill having earned the right to be the backup. But it looks like Jameis is going to get the start, and he will be the backup. We might see more of Taysom Hill than maybe we would if Drew Brees was under center, if he wants to mix things up a little bit. So you might see a little more of him, kind of interacting in the role. But right now, the keys to the black and gold franchise has been turned over to Jameis Winston.
On a 1-year deal. And again, this is total Twinkie Twilight Zone. I'm going to talk more in the final segment when we bring Brian Edwards, our senior handicapper, back about this. But I did Raheem Morris's radio show, pregame, postgame as the Buccaneers coach for years, did pregame and postgame interviews for 5 years with Jameis Winston. And so now we have a Falcons-Saints game with Raheem Morris coaching Atlanta and Jameis Winston quarterbacking the Saints. Right. I officially check out now on 2020 on trying to figure any of this out. Hey, Chris, give me a quick comment from you. Do you believe that it will be Winston? And we're speculating. Mostly, do you believe he might go 1-1A and play a lot of Taysom Hill, Sean Payton, at least for this game, while they figure it out? Again, you're detached. Give me an educated guess real quick.
I would play both guys. I like Taysom Hill personally. I love what he brings, how dynamic he is. We're talking about old Jameis Winston. Oh, Crab Legs Winston. I haven't heard his name, I feel like, in a while, because obviously I'm a little detached from the NFL game. I did see, though, Javon Kinlaw got a sack, former Gamecock, in that game for the Niners. But I would play both guys. I'm sure they'll roll out there with Winston first. And he does some nice things. But, again, his stats kind of speak for themselves. What was he last year? A 30-30 guy. I mean, the inconsistencies are there. And so I'll just say this. If I'm Sean Payton, I have a quick trigger. You know what I mean? You know you have a guy behind him that's capable, that can play. So you want to roll out there with Winston, fine, as your starter. But there's somebody else on the bench that can get the job done. That's kind of the way I'd look at it.
Right. One thing you got to remember,
Victor, what do you think? Yeah,
well, Jameis hasn't had a lot of time with the ones. He's been playing solely the backup role because Drew Brees is there. So while I agree with Chris about maybe a quick trigger finger, the other side of it is for Sean Payton, he is now going to have a whole week for Jameis to work with the ones. And Sean can also dummy down the offense. Don't put it on Jameis to make all sorts of wild decisions, force things into play like he did in Tampa, and get back on that pace of being in the 30-30 club. He can slow it down. When he was at Tampa, he didn't have a guy like Alvin Kamara behind him. I know he had Michael down there with you, but he's also got Michael Thomas here. He's got another Michael at wide receiver. Sean Payton might tell him, look, don't force anything. We've got a defense that hasn't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 52 games. We've got an offensive line that can protect you. Don't make the dumb play. Make the smart decision. Throw it out of bounds if you have to, and we'll reset, because you both of y'all know Sean Payton's offensive creativity is out of this world, and he might just go down there and try to dummy it down enough to keep Jameis in a tighter window before he pulls a quick trigger. That also does lead to Taysom Hill, though, because Taysom's been with this offense longer. So if he needs to, he can put Taysom in, who knows the offense better, whether it's the Wildcat or actually throwing out of the backfield.
All right, we'll see how all of that works. Again, Winston has never in his Florida State final season or the last 5 years been able to stay away from the interceptions. We shall see, because it appears we're going to get a sample here of at least a couple of games or more. Teddy Bridgewater was very good in place of Brees a year ago, not trying to do too much. Let's see what happens with Jameis Winston now that this situation exists. All right, one more time, I'm going to promote my guys here on the program. The Spurs Up program with Chris Phillips can be found right here, the SpursUpShow.com. He's on 5 days a week, correct, Chris?
Monday through Friday. Yes, sir.
Everything South Carolina on the Spurs Up Show. Check him out, SpursUpShow.com, wherever you get podcasts. Spurs Up at the Spurs Up Show on social media. We're seeing that on the screen on the YouTube roundtable. Victor Howell, my man, look at Victor Howell here on Twitter, at Howell on CST for Cox Sports Television and their coverage. There is Victor jamming up on stage as well. Little musical talent. Love
it's
that.
We're the band Louisiana. The band's so big they named a state after us.
There you go. All right, the Louisiana band. I love it. And look at this motley crew on Cox Sports Television before and after game. Scott Shanley, as Victor mentioned, and my buddy Mike Neighbors from Tampa. What a motley crew that is doing the games pregame and postgame for Saints game day prior to the Falcons game on Cox Sports Television, their regional coverage, etc. Find them online. You see that if you're with us again on the YouTube roundtable. I think I got all the plugs in. Boys, you did a fantastic job. Chris, thank you for everything South Carolina. Victor, thank you for the insight on everything Louisiana and the New Orleans Saints. I appreciate both of you coming on board here on Three Dog Thursday.
DJ, it's a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.
A lot of fun. Thanks, DJ.
Thank you, guys. We will continue on Three Dog Thursday as Brian Edwards rejoins me to talk some more NFL right now.